Hi, I'm at Olynthos, which is an ancient Greek city, town, about 432 BC, Philip Macedon sort of era. It's situated on two hills, a north and a southern hill. In fact, the southern hill has got some Neolithic on it as well. But it's one of the first towns laid out on the Hippodamian grid street layout. The water was brought in from about 8 miles away. It's a beautiful day here today. All the trees are in blossom, the spring flowers are out, it's alive with butterflies and insects. Very peaceful. A lot of the mosaics are covered up to protect them, but you can see here there's a bit of mosaic there, and they're river pebbles that have been laid. And the walls you see here for all these buildings, they've all been rebuilt essentially on the foundations of where the rocks were found, so you could see the grid layout, but also to protect those foundations. And the same with the internal floors, which are sort of lined with stones and pebbles. And the streets have pavements. They had rocks, so the streets were paved. And they also had cisterns, storage pits, and there's one here, there's a storage pit. If I come up here, through the threshold here, into the small room, you can see down there, the storage pit. So they would have had about 10 olive presses, they think, here, and protecting their, unfortunately succumbed to Philip of Macedon, who came in and took the Athenian garrison and the population off into slavery. And the archaeologists found a place littered with arrowheads which had Philip of Macedon's stamp on, so we know who the perpetrator was. You can see the mountains in the distance where they brought the water in. They actually laid pipes carved in under the rock in caves, and you can see here there would have been the mosaics, which are now protected under sand. That's looking across to another escarpment and the olive groves. It's looking back to the entrance. And if I walk over here, tread on the ruins, which is not supposed not to do, but I guess if they've been rebuilt it doesn't really matter so much. It looks like there's more storage pits, and everywhere you walk is littered with terracotta. So one would have perhaps held olive oil or grain. And that's a big pit. In fact, that's not a pit, that looks more like a well, doesn't it, down there? Very deep. You can see here the covered drain that would have taken the surface water away. And the streets all follow the contours of the land, so when it rains the streets are cleansed. And then if I whiz back here again, this is the more administrative centre, this is the arsenal here, so perhaps that's why it's got such thicker walls. Don't know what these plants are, they've just flowered. I'm looking out to the bay there, it's the Turonian Bay, and I'm now heading south, as you can tell by the sun, and you can see the slight elevation there as I'm heading to the, as the sign says, up onto the South Hill, which was an expansion from the original town, which is walled, and then when it expanded, and then the posher people had their houses on the outside. I'm walking now, rising up, walking up onto the southern hill, trying to keep the camera as steady as possible. I suppose, what's that, 5 metres, something like that. So defensively, you can see why they put the town where they did. It grew quite rapidly, grew in prominence, and eventually it was abandoned. The southern hill doesn't seem to be restored after its excavation like the northern. There's a Grills over another cistern. In fact, some big works here. Something going on, wasn't there? Look at that over there. Big pedestal blocks there on the floor. I've got to watch where I go because I don't want to get stung, because I suffer from anaphylaxis. So if I get stung by a bee or a wasp, I need to go and inject myself with adrenaline. So Olynthos, which is the name of the place we are, in the language of the time, or in Greek, I don't know which, means place of the fig tree. So I guess at some stage in the past there were fig trees up here. Now the only residents are the wildlife. There's buzzards overhead. I've heard them. Almost trod on a cicada, and that flew off. Big old things. And I'm obviously here at the right time for butterflies, because I don't know if you can hear it, it's just buzzing with life. Don't know what these little fellows are here. Red insects, that they're smothered all over this plant. So it must smell nice or exude something they find very attractive. Don't know what they are, but it's something to look up when we get back. I'm now standing on the southern hill. You can see some sort of earthworks here with stone there, and I'm looking across the bay to Cassandra there, and if it was a clear day you'd probably see Mount Olympus back towards Thessaloniki. I'm amazed that a historic site like this, so 10 kilometres away, there's a posh 5-star hotel, a load of fat people sitting around the swimming pool. They could be here. We've come across a rather ex-tortoise there, haven't we? Been there for a while. I struggled my way through all these plants. There's a bit sort of a cross between a yucca and a daffodil, I think. Back across the olive groves. Worked my way right to the southern end, which is where they say there was Neolithic remains found. So let's go and have a pop over there and have a look. I'm now standing on top of some sort of rectilinear type building remains. I would say it looks like a square tower to me, but it's set within ramparts. Look, all the way there, right at the southern end. So when I get back I'll have to look up, and that gives you an idea of the scale of the two hills we're on. It's looking back towards the gatehouse. You pay to come in, and then a little bit further on the right hand side there you can see a building. There's a small museum, and more interesting probably are the nesting swallows chattering away. You can see on this map we entered over here, came up here, I went to the little museum, skirted our way up. This is the excavated, restored piece of the town. Obviously went on a lot further. That was the built outside the walls, and then on the south side they started building an expanded city, and I walked all the way along to the end. And I was right, there's a Byzantine tower, so that's a lot later, wasn't it? And the Neolithic settlement right on the very end.